You know what I can't stand? Babies. They cry, poop everywhere, take forever to hatch, and are terrible for combat. We are talking about Pokemon. Just thought I should clarify that. Introduced in Generation 2, baby Pokemon were a new category of Pokemon that served as pre-evolutions for pre-existing species. In total, 8 baby Pokemon were introduced in this generation, most notably including Togepi, who was an exception to the norm, being just a brand new Pokemon species in general. And also kinda just generally being the mascot for this entire category of Pokemon. Because Togepi is, of course, an egg, which comes from breeding, a brand new mechanic introduced in Generation 2. So on an extremely surface level, this was likely the main idea behind introducing baby Pokemon. It encouraged players, even ones who weren't competitive, to interact with this new feature if they wanted to complete their Pokédex, something that was still relatively important back in the year 2000. It's also worth noting that this was around the same time that Pokemon was transforming into a global phenomenon, and you better believe that tons of controversies were coming out of it. I'm looking at you, Christian moms! Maybe baby Pokemon being more cute and less monstrous and showing the more gentle side of the franchise was a possible PR stunt to get angry moms on their side. I can't say that for certain, but I feel like there's probably a kernel of truth in there, especially considering how drastically some of the Gen 1 Pokemon were redesigned. After all, a lot of baby Pokemon, especially from the first class, are just kinda cutesy, plushy merchandise bait. Pichu is probably the most prime example of that. I mean, seriously, did Pikachu or Jigglypuff or Clefairy, who were already extremely early game Pokemon, really need a pre-evolution? I think I forget Igglybuff even exists most days. So no, not all of these were created with a gameplay perspective in mind, but the others are mostly solid, I would say. Togepi, again, brand new Pokemon, it gets a pass. Tyrogue, really good. I don't love how late in the game you obtain it, or how the way it evolves is determined by mostly invisible values that a lot of players wouldn't have any idea how to control, but it does connect Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan together into one evolutionary family, which just feels right. It's hard to believe there was ever a point in history where these two weren't related. They have the same legal name! And then we got Hitmontop as an added bonus, even though he sorta sucks in Gen 2. The last three, Smoochum, Elekid, and Magby, really don't have any purpose in Gold and Silver, but when Crystal came along and you could feasibly get them early through the odd egg, they actually became fairly valuable Pokemon. Smoochum is the earliest any Ice type had been available in a Pokemon game at that point, and meant you didn't have to wait all the way until Ice Path to get one. Elekid served as a great alternative to Mareep, and could evolve into Electabuzz way before you'd normally get one at the Kanto power plant in the postgame. And Magby, well, they kinda had to sabotage Magmar and Crystal by removing him from the Burn Tower to make Magby somewhat valuable in this game, but hey, it's at least a solid Fire-type option. But outside of just Johto, these three in particular were great news for future titles in the series. Take Black 2 and White 2, for example, where Elekid and Magby are available relatively early in the game at Verbank Complex. A place where it would have been much harder to place Magmar or Electabuzz because of how powerful they are. They definitely would have upset the early game balance. But now, you can get their pre-evolve forms at a suitable time and work towards their evolutions without having to wait an extremely long time to catch them in the wild. Smoochum is the same in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. It's no secret that Alola has very few habitats for Ice-type Pokemon, which is why they're mostly absent until the last quarter of the game. But in these titles, they could drop Smoochum in Seaward Cave and give you access to an Ice-type that isn't Delibird without having to wait that long. So you can certainly see how this trio carries way more importance than the likes of Cleffa or Igglybuff, who more or less just feel like filler Pokemon. And it could have been a lot worse, as numerous Game Freak leaks over the years have revealed that Gen 2 was originally going to have a crap ton more baby Pokemon. Baby Growlithe, Baby Goldeen, Baby Tangela, Baby Paris, Baby Ponyta, who literally looks like the exact same Pokemon, and even Baby Grimer, who just makes no sense to me at all. Interestingly enough, Mime Jr. was also supposed to be here instead of Gen 4. So while that's all fine and dandy, Ruby and Sapphire had some great ideas to ruin absolutely everything. With Hoenn not being directly connected to Kanto or Johto, this generation did not introduce any new evolutions to old Pokemon. But for whatever reason, it did introduce two extremely random pre-evolutions. Wynot and Azurill, both of which fall into that Cleffa and Igglybuff category of why? Marill was already a relatively weak early game Pokemon that didn't need a pre-evolution, and Wobbuffet can't even attack directly, he's already a gimmick Pokemon as is. I can only imagine they were created for, say it with me now, merchandise. These two were both very popular Pokemon in Gen 2, and they saw a golden opportunity to cash out with cute baby versions of these two, even though one of them has a massive protruding pimple on its forehead, which is what I'd call the exact opposite of cute. But wait, there's more! From this point forward, basically every single baby evolution would be through friendship, so you can't even toss them in the daycare for free levels like with Magby and Elekid. You needed them to take up a free slot on your team to mooch that sweet EXP, and in an era where EXP was way more scarce than it is today. And you could no longer just throw a Marill and a Ditto in the daycare together and crank out a new dex entry. No, that would break pre-established canon, you silly goose, we can't have that! Now you need a special incense item for your Pokemon to hold before it begins the breeding process. And not just a single incense item that covers every baby Pokemon, no, all of them are going to have their own individual item with almost no text in-game telling you how they work. These items were practically invented to sell strategy guides at GameStop in the 2000s. And don't you dare think about catching a Zuru in the wild, you'll be waiting until White version 8 years later! Granted, this wouldn't have been that big of an issue if Diamond and Pearl didn't double down on it and introduce another 8 baby Pokemon. And with the exception of Riolu, who is brand new, of course all of them had their own incense items as well. Now again, some of these aren't awful. Badoo is probably the best of the bunch. It's available incredibly early in the game, it's balanced for the portion that you have it, and it's honestly kinda surprising when it evolves into Roselia. I remember having no idea that would happen when I was a kid playing Diamond for the first time. And with it evolving again into Roserade, it almost makes this entire family feel more Gen 4 than Gen 3. And it was a great way to reintroduce a previously underwhelming standalone Pokemon. And while some of them weren't exactly great in Gen 4, some of them have aged decently well, like Bonsly, Happiny, and Munchlax, who are now used as viable early game options in some of the newer titles. Munchlax, in all honesty, is probably one of my favorite Alola Nuzlocke Pokemon. It's still really tanky and gives you access to Snorlax at a pretty fair point in the game. Mantike is also a pretty decent one, since you usually don't have to breed for it, not even in the Gen 4 games. And the way it evolves is kinda cute and creative instead of just being a friendship grind. It's a decent early game water type in a lot of regions. After Diamond and Pearl, baby Pokemon would seemingly be retired, at least until 13 years later in Pokemon Sword and Shield, when Toxel was introduced out of left field. Now, while Toxel is classified as a baby Pokemon, it's definitely a lot different from most of them. For starters, Toxel evolves at level 30 instead of Friendship, making it more similar to Smoochum, Magby, and Elekid. And since it's a brand new Pokemon, it doesn't require an incense to breed for. Pretty much the only thing baby-like about Toxel is its design, where it literally wears a diaper. I mean, Volibee does too, I guess, and it has really low stats. Obnoxiously low stats at times. But oddly enough, despite introducing 0 new baby Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet appears to be the games that have done the most for them. Now, almost all baby Pokemon are available to be captured in the region somewhere, removing the breeding requirement almost entirely. And, as I previously mentioned in my video about Pokemon retcons, they finally realized that the world wouldn't end if we could just breed baby Pokemon without the need for incense items. I think it's completely okay if the mechanics of current-day Pokemon don't match up with games that were released in an entirely different millennium. We will survive! If anything, it feels like baby Pokemon have finally been somewhat normalized to a degree. Sure, some of them are still frustratingly pointless. Like, why would I bother catching and leveling up an Igglybuff and Paldea when Jigglypuff is available right across the river? Wow, I know this sounds like an Igglybuff slander video, and I promise it's not, it's just the most glaring example, unfortunately. And furthermore, friendship evolutions are not nearly as grindy or time-consuming as they used to be, at least on everything except Baniri for some reason. In fact, baby Pokemon have been so dramatically reworked in the last few years, I wouldn't totally hate to see a few more of them. Imagine a baby Lapras or baby Skarmory that finally makes them usable at the beginning of the game. Or a baby Meteor thing that combines Solrock and Lunatone into one evolution family, similar to what Tyrogue did for Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan. Or the exact same thing applied to Miltank and Tauros. I know I've done a lot of dunking on baby Pokemon over the years, as I'm sure almost everyone has, but if done correctly, I think they could actually be welcome additions to the series. Furthermore, it feels like other media is finally tapping into baby Pokemon as well. They've come and gone from the TCG over the years, with many of them not having any cards printed since their debut generations. I think Bonsly literally just got its second card ever in the Scarlet and Violet series, which is crazy to me. And after playing TCG Pocket for a bit, I've come to realize that the TCG has actually made baby Pokemon work pretty well. Yeah, they're extremely squishy and frail, as you may expect, but they can often attack on the first turn with no energy attached, and they have no retreat cost, which is kinda awesome for a lot of decks. Apparently they have been reworked several times throughout TCG's history, and I'm not a TCG expert by any means, so I can't speak to how good or bad they've been. I mean, I know that Badoo was like the most broken card of 2025, which is kinda funny. On Pokemon Center, they've launched a brand new line of merch called Mon Poke, which is aimed at babies and toddlers and exclusively focuses on baby Pokemon, which I think is fantastic branding. It definitely seems like they are putting more effort into recontextualizing baby Pokemon as being characters for young children, rather than creatures with a purpose for battling in the games. Again, even in the TCG, it seems like most of the time, the baby Pokemon just play support rather than actually attacking and doing damage, which is pretty fitting. Baby Pokemon also play a decent role in Pokemon Go, where you can only get them from eggs most of the time. It adds some importance to that aspect of the game, especially since Pokedex filling is actually kinda fun in Pokemon Go. So, I guess in summary, yes, baby Pokemon definitely started as a bit of a flawed concept and became increasingly annoying over time, getting taken out of the franchise in many areas, being generally annoying to obtain and use in-game, but it feels like they found a little bit more of a niche in recent years. If anything, I might be coming around on them. They sort of demonstrate how every Pokemon has a purpose in the grand scheme of the overall franchise, and not just the battling in the core games. So, what do you think? Do you enjoy baby Pokemon, or do you still think that they kinda suck? Let me know in the comment section down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.